Dr. Dave, welcome. Welcome.
Got a load of people on here.
Everybody's waiting for you eagerly. Welcome to the University of Redlands Management 601. We have our MBA students with you today to listen to you and welcome you. Also, I have our Associate Dean, Keith Roberts. He's here also to welcome you on behalf of the School of Business. So I'm going to give the microphone to him, and then we come back and we talk.
Well, welcome, Dr. Ulrich. I'm very sorry I wasn't able to actually log into the system tonight. You know, the technology doesn't always work, but I'm here on the phone. So I've been telling the students we're honored tonight to have a very special guest, a university professor, author, speaker, management coach, and consultant. We in the school are focused on skills needed in the 21st century, and I understand you're going to be talking to us about reinventing HR in the 21st century. So I'm excited and honored to be able to listen to what you have to say tonight. So on behalf of our students, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the University of Redlands School of Business and to our virtual classroom. So again, as Abraham said, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. What a privilege. I'm honored to be here. Thank you. Very nice to be here.
Nice to see you again. We had several opportunities to be with you. And this is an exceptional one because this deals with the heart of our future purposeful leaders at the School of Business. We very much cater toward creating individuals and students that are going to be the future purposeful leaders. So our Associate Dean mentioned some of the works you do, but I want to also tell everyone that our dear Dr. Dave is considered the father of our modern HR. I dare publicly to say he is our current Peter Drucker. If you read the Drucker's philosophy, you need to read the philosophies and theories of our dear Dave Ulrich. He is considered also the guru of management. Tonight, he will share with us the reinventing of HR as we know it, especially as we pass and sail into the 21st century. There's a new model he and his colleagues researched, and they model it and they call it organization guidance system. So in his presentation tonight, he will talk about that. He will also have the chance to listen to some of your questions. Very humble of him, and we thank him for him to do that. So we'll have probably 4 or 5 questions. It depends on the time allowed. Dr. Dave, the floor is yours.
Oh, my goodness. Well, first of all, Dean Roberts, thank you for allowing me to come to Redlands University. It's an honor to be with such esteemed colleagues and obviously with students who live in great places. I see, Keith, the backdrop that you live in is just incredible. I assume that's your backyard, and just very impressive. And I actually I like being in person more than by video, but sometimes remote video lets you peek into people's lives a little bit. You get to see, this is my office and where I live and work, and you kind of get to peek, and I really covet Keith's office. So I wish I had that outdoor office, Keith, that you have. And anyway, so welcome to my home, welcome to my office. And Scott, you have not a bad office either, with the palm trees and the elegant. And I'm sure that's something you prepare for. But it's really fun to join you and to share a few ideas. I've had the privilege of working with, and I don't know Dr. Abe, if you go by Dr. Abe, if you go by Master Abe, if you go by the King Abe, I don't know which, and I see some people laughing in those names, but I've gotten to know Abraham over the last year or so, and I just am so impressed with his incredible combination of wisdom and goodness. And he talks about being purposeful leaders. There's a great line that comes out of religion, that it's not just unique to religion. We preach the gospel and sometimes use words. And I think the demonstration of values is more important than the rhetoric. And I think, Abraham, you live those, and it's a privilege to be with you and to share that experience with your students. So when he invited me, I was excited. I thought I'd share a few notes that may or may not be helpful. And so let me see if I can share screen, and I'll see if I have the technology ability to do that. And just to set a foundation for kind of what I see happening in the world that we live in and the world that is the future. One of the things, I have a bias, and I like that I did the AMK group of companies as the dominant logo. I don't know where I got that, but I thought that was actually quite a good logo. That's Dr. Abe's logo. but I thought I'd share with you kind of my view of what's going on and the value of the guidance system. I know you've talked about it. I really want to engage you. So let me not go too long, but get a couple of ideas out real quick. You'll have access to these slides. I'll send them off. It looks like a lot of material, but I'm not going to cover it all. I'll just highlight kind of what we're thinking. The logic is that human capability, the people issues have become more critical. And I think many of us sense that the 2008 and 2009 crisis was a debt and economic crisis where government and companies and individual debt was extended and we had to get financial discipline. I think the crises today are the people and organization crisis. And I'll talk about that as human capability and how do we build organization and leadership. So I'll talk about that context. I'll talk about the guidance system. And then in black, I'll just highlight some of the results we're finding. Being at the University of Redlands, and I'm sure, Dean Roberts, you appreciate, I don't know, Dean Roberts, your area of expertise, but we love data. We love research. And I think data gives us insights, and I'll share with you some of the data we're collecting. And that's in the black items real quick. And then mostly to get engaged with you and to see the hope that you give for where we go forward. So let me start. I think you've almost got to always start with the setting in which we live. I like the line. It's not mine. I don't know who said it, but I've stolen it. Content is king. It's king or queen. This isn't a gender thing. And context is the kingdom. So content is what we do. Context is the setting in which we do it. I think we've all been through in the last year and a half some incredible changes that we've all faced. The COVID pandemic, and if you're in California, you've got so much variance. And for around the world, this is so variable. And I think our hearts go out right now to anyone who has family or friends in India who are up in the 350 to 400 cases, 400,000 cases a day, when the United States at its max was 200 to 250. And that pandemic just is changed the world we live in. I mean, we are now hibernating. We're in our offices. We're remote. The social injustice, social issues, not only in the United States with George Floyd and Black Lives Matter and the Me Too movement, but in Europe. That's the refugee issue that Brexit was all about. In Turkey and in Asia, that's the yellow umbrella. That's the political movement. Political posturing, obviously, in the United States, this incredible dissent that kind of stifles everything and keeps politics from being a servant to being a barrier. Global recession, digital revolution. We all know the technology is just so rapid and so changing in so many ways. And all of that adding up to an emotional deficit. And we could spend hours on that. But in that world, what do we have to do? And I think the common response is to feel threatened. In fact, I've been with people that just say, I don't know where to go. I'm threatened. And our mind shuts down. What I want to try to do is help discover opportunity. In the middle of those crises, how do we find opportunity? And as I said, a lot of those crises are around the people issues, the human capability is the word I'm going to use in a minute. Not what's wrong, but what's right. What can I do? And I hope all of you, it would be fun to have you share stories. What have you done? I'm looking at Alexander. I mean, I see Alexander behind you. There's some cool pictures. Over your left shoulder, it looks like a plant. Are you willing to share what any of those pictures are, Alexander?
Very expensive experiences from both my wife and myself. So 3 degrees from the University of Redlands behind us and 1 from Cal State San Bernardino.
Wow, that is expensive. I mean, did they come by FedEx or UPS? No, that's a bad joke. Bad joke. I did. No. Yeah, I think it's so cool to say, I think we've learned some things. I've learned some things in the last year and a half. And how do we get opportunity out of this crisis? And I'm going to call that human capability. A lot of companies, and I know that many of you work in companies, have tried initiative after initiative. And I made a list. Look at all these things we're trying. We're trying strategic redirection. We're trying team building. We're trying innovation. We're trying social responsibility, employee engagement. You could almost cluster those. Look at all the tsunami of activities that my organization or the things we're trying to do. And universities, I'm sure, are trying some of the same things. I could assume even at Redlands University, we're trying some of those things. I see them everywhere, showing empathy, team building. Here's the question. in the middle of these crises, do I know where to invest to make progress? Of all these things I could do, which ones are going to have the biggest bang for the buck? Which ones are going to make a bigger difference in my life? It's kind of like you sit and you look at the Redlands course catalog and you say, look at all these courses I could take. I could take finance, marketing, strategy, information. Which one should I take so that I'll get the best bang for my buck, the best investment for what I do? By the way, the answer is Dr. Abraham's course, just so that you know the right answer. I'm giving you answers to the test. But where should I invest? And what we find is a lot of times in the human capability area, even though it's a center stage, we don't know where to invest. The scores are 5, 6, 4, 5, 6. So we decided to try to figure out where in the human capability area do we need to focus? What are the implications of that? I think for business leaders, I think we're seeing one of the keys to success at the senior executive level is obviously you've got to have strategic agility. You've got to know where to focus your business to win. You've got to have financial discipline. How do you manage and make numbers? You've got to have access to technology. But the differentiator increasingly is this thing called human capability. I think as a new employee, as a student looking at career change, I'm going to succeed because I can create human capability. What does that mean? We believe human capability is composed of 4 basic elements. And I'm going to use my hands and arms to show. One is my fingers. That's the talent. That's the raw ingredients. You've got to have basic raw ingredients. If you're going to cook a meal, you got to have great ingredients. If you're going to have music, you got to have raw ingredients. If you're going to have sports, you got to have the raw athletes. My fist is the organization. Those ingredients have got to come together, and the ingredients make a cookie or a meal. Those ingredients make the music. It's not one instrument, it's a choir. You've got to have great talent, and you've got to have great organization. The one that brings them together, you got your fingers as talent, the organization is the fist. They come together through leadership. That leaders combine people and create great organizations. I don't know if anybody follows sports. In California, I follow the NBA. I like the NBA. Once in a while, the leading scorer, he scores the most points, is on the team that wins the championship. How often? About 15% of the time. And a lot of that was Michael Jordan. But it's really interesting to use Michael Jordan as an example. And bear with me if you're not a sports fan, but Michael Jordan was the scoring leader in the NBA 9 times. 9 times he led scoring. He was one of the greatest basketball players in history. And if you ask him, he would claim that, which is also part of the ego that he may have. 3 times he did not win the championship. Leading scorer didn't win. He averaged 36 points a game. 6 times he won the championship. How many points a game do you think he averaged? More or less? Less, 29. Until his individual scoring dropped 20%, he did not win the championship. That it's not just about you as an individual, it's about the team that you create around you. By the way, that's a silly example. I use it because of sports and it's timely. I know Redlands, there may be people that follow Golden State. Seth Curry is probably one of the greatest shooters in the NBA history. I think over the last 3 weeks, he's averaged 35, leading scorer this year in the NBA. I am willing to take a wager that their team will not win the championship this year. And by the way, that's not a hard bet. It's just saying, just because you have the best player does not necessarily mean you're going to have the best team. That you've got to have great talent that comes together as a team. And you got to have great leadership. And then human resources are my forearms. The human resource systems sustain talent, organization, and leadership. That's what human capability is. And when I put that lens on all of those initiatives, suddenly what's complex becomes more simple. The red items are about talent. The red items tell me, what can I do to begin to measure my talent? I retain people. I get employee engagement. I have team incentives. The blue items are about the organization. I have an agile organization. I have strategic redirection. I have social responsibility. That's what my organization is good at. The purple items are HR, and the green items are leadership. So suddenly, what was kind of confusing about all of these crazy items, we can now put into a topology. This is the nature of human capability. And then we want to begin to provide guidance. I was trying to think, as I was thinking this afternoon about this discussion, guidance is such a good idea, because guidance is not about benchmarking. And I'm going to stop here in just a few minutes. I'm not going to go through all the slides. In our field, we love to benchmark. And I have books behind me, and you can see all the books tell me a best practice. How am I doing versus someone else? That's benchmarking. Best practice. Who's really good that I can copy? How do I become as effective as person X or as talented as person Y? Intervention. Number 3, what did they do that made them good? I think all of that is not required. What we want is the green. What can I do to make myself better? So if I'm going to be an effective student, I don't have to benchmark. How do my grades compare to someone else? I don't even have to have best practice. I don't have to be the best. I don't have to see the interventions that made someone the best. I need to say, what can I do? What's the impact and guidance for me? That's the logic I think we're heading towards in organizations today. How do we give guidance about these human capability issues? How do we give guidance about talent in a company? How do we give guidance about leadership, organization, and HR? That's the logic of guidance. And in an organization, you can get career guidance. What do I want? What's important to me? And one of the things, I know many of you are getting your MBAs as a mid-career and career change. I was coaching a really talented woman today who's thinking about a career change. She's fairly senior level. And the first question I ask her about guidance is, what do you want? What do you want? What are your strengths? What are your passions? What are your interests? What do you want? Guidance begins with that result. What do you want? And then what's the pathway to help me get there? That could apply to your career. And some of you may be doing an MBA to manage your career. It could apply to retirement. What lifestyle do I want in retirement? That's more my life stage. It could require your investment. Am I getting a good return? It could guidance can be the user guide, the missile system. It could be a phone. Guidance is powerful because it doesn't describe on the left what you're doing. It prescribes what you could be doing to get better. And so we've taken that logic and gone into an organization and said, what are the results we're trying to create in a company? I'm a manager. I'm a leader. I want employee results. I want my employees to be committed and competent and engaged. I want a strategy result to know where I differentiate. I want a customer result to get promoter score. I want financial results, and I want social citizenship results. Given those results, where can I get guidance in talent, leadership, organization, and HR? What can I do in those areas so the results happen? So this is the question about guidance that we've been trying to answer. I can start on the right. Here's the results I want. I want my company to increase customer retention. I want to have more financial profitability. The arrow goes to the left because of talent, organization, leadership, and HR. Or I say, I want to invest in talent, leadership, organization, HR, so that those results happen. And it's the connection between those two, the human capability on the left, talent, leadership, organization, HR, and the stakeholders on the right. And when we can meld those, we create incredible companies. That's the work we're trying to understand. That's the work we're trying to create with our guidance system. And this is the grid that we end up with, which is just crazy. And you won't be able to read it. You'll have the notes if you want a copy of them. You got 5 columns. Those are the outcomes: employee, strategy, customer, financial, and social responsibility. You got 4 colors: talent, leadership, capabilities, organization, and HR. We have identified 37 initiatives, 10 in talent, 6 in leadership, 12 organization, and 9 in HR. Now I have a matrix, 5 columns by 37 rows. That's 185 cells. Where should my company invest in the next year? Where do I get guidance? And again, it's kind of back to student. Look at the business school at Redlands. Look at all the courses I could take. Which ones are going to help me get my goals? What do I want and how do I get guidance? We're now trying to apply that logic to an organization. We have mathematics and statistics to do it. You'll see some of the results. I'm just going to show you one result. Ooh, I get to pick. Dr. Abe, pick a student and they get to pick which of those 4 pathways I should work on. Just any student in your class, just pick one and we'll have them pick a pathway.
Let's go with Idris.
Idris. Do you want to look at talent, leadership, organization, or HR?
Let's look at HR.
Oh, wow. Are you in HR?
I am not, but one of my questions was about HR.
So let's go to HR. Idris, and I'm really sorry you chose. What field are you in?
I'm in the hospitality field.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, I can't make fun of you. I love the thing over your right shoulder. That picture is just beautiful in your office. So let's look at HR. So here's the question, and I'm now going to jump way ahead in my notes. You'll get copies of these just to show you the kind of thing we're trying that I hope as somebody entering the business world, you'll see. I'm going to jump ahead. We've got talent. This is hyperspeed. This will all be on the test. And we hope you're able to pass it. Let's go to HR. Here's the question. What should we do to make our human resource investments more effective? That's a very good question. So we begin to look at what effectiveness means. Is HR focused on administrative utility? Are we trying to reduce the cost per employee? Are we trying to manage the number of days of training? Are we focused on functional expertise, best practice? What's the best practice in compensation or training? Are we focused on our strategy, linking HR to strategy? Or are we focused on HR creating value in the marketplace? We see the trend right now that you move up these waves, that HR is not just about efficiency. HR is not just about the best practice or strategy. It's helping us succeed in the marketplace. Those are the 4 stages of maturity. So function or foundation, function, strategic, outside in. We've identified 9 domains of what an HR department could look like. Number 1, what's our reputation? And you could look at that at 4 levels. Number 2, who are our customers? Who do we serve in HR? Number 3, what's our mission and purpose? Number 4, how are we organized? How's HR structured? Number 5, how do we create the right capabilities for the company? Number 6, how do we do analytics and manage information? Number 7, how do we manage our HR systems, staffing, training, development? Number 8, how do we improve the quality of HR people? And number 9, how do we manage relationships and the connection among those in HR and outside? By the way, that's a pretty complicated grid. This is where I could invest in HR to be effective. Here's what we find. And this is an example of the guidance system that takes just a minute or 2 of explanation. And I've got it with talent, organization, leadership. First of all, look at the 9 rows. Those are the 9 dimensions of HR. These are the things HR can focus on: our reputation, our customers, our purpose, our organization, etc. Column A, we have data now, and it's a beta test from 482 individuals and companies. That's the global mean, 1 to 5-point scale. So which of those 5 things do HR departments do the best at? The lowest is number 6. If you follow A down, it's metrics, 2.89. Column B, and the best, if you follow that down, is our purpose. Most HR departments have a pretty high purpose, 3.44. Standard deviation is how much variety is there among these 482 companies. What most folks like to do is then compare themselves. So you'd have 1A or A1 or B1 and say, where does my company compare? I'm in a hospitality company. Where do I compare? Who's the best practice? What are they doing well? So I try to become more likely to have a high score in the A column for my company. We believe guidance changes you to C, D, E, F, and G. C, D, E, F, and G are the outcomes: employee productivity, employee well-being. C, D, strategic reinvention. E, Customer, net promoter score, customer value. In hospitality, we want those customer scores to be terrific. F, financial results. G, social citizenship. Now what we've done, and if you've had statistics, it's not a regression, but it's like a regression. Take each column separately, C, D, E, F, G, and H, and say, what's the relative impact of each of those 9 rows? Now, for those who follow statistics, it's like regression, but you get a thing called multicollinearity. And so we've created an algorithm called variance decomposition. But what it says is, let me do row C and row G. Just, I want to improve employee results. Green, yellow, red. Green, the most important thing I can do in HR is build the reputation of the HR department. Well, that's pretty cool, 17.8 points. The second most important thing in green is make clear about who our customers are. The third most important thing, number 8, is manage our professional skills better. Get really competent HR people. If I want to improve my employee results, that's my outcome. Now I know where to guide the investments to make that happen. If I want to improve column, let's do column F, financial results. I want to get more profit. What have I got to do? Row 9. So look down F, the highest score, the darkest green, 16.5. The biggest thing I got to do to get my financial results up is make sure that the HR people have good relationships. The next 2 are tied. Number 1 is 14 and number 6 is metrics. I now know where to invest to get financial results to happen. I think that's cool. That's the guidance. The other thing that's cool is if you look across those rows, you begin to say, if I'm in HR, and hopefully some of you are, or will move into that, where should I invest to make my HR department more effective? And you look across those rows and it looks like number 9, relationships, is going to have the biggest impact across more of those outcomes, more of those columns. Row 3 and row 1. I don't need to invest as much on the practices of HR. I don't need to invest as much on the department or organization of HR, but what I need, or the capability building, I need to invest in row 9. That's the guidance that we get. That's the overall guidance grid based on our test of 1,000 companies. And that's where I'm going to end. Whoa, I covered a whole semester of stuff. And if you're still awake, you probably should get 10 or 20 bonus points. And if you care, you probably should get about 100 bonus points. But what we're trying to do is to say, the job of a leader in the future is not to compare yourself with others. By the way, I hope that's good guidance overall. I don't want to compare myself with someone else. And you don't want to go get best practice. I want to know what works for me. What's my agenda? This woman I was coaching today, it was so fun. What is it you define as success? And she said, well, I've seen my friends do this and others. And I said, I don't want to talk about your friends. What is it you define as success? What do you want based on your strengths, passions, and skills? And then let's help you get what works for you. That's the logic of guidance. All we've done is apply that logic to an organizational setting. And with a little bit of luck and some data, I think we're able to give good guidance through a guidance system.
Thank you so much. It's very helpful and very insightful. And thank you for going through the details, because we needed that so we can delve into this model. How many people did you interview for this research?
Well, right now we're collecting data. I think we're at about 2,000 people and about 1,200 companies. So the data I just shared was about 1,000 companies. So, I mean, this is ongoing research. Guidance doesn't quit on May 15th when we pay taxes or make.
It's an ongoing thing. I asked you this question before, and I asked you, are we in the stagnation stage? And you told me, no, I hope we're not. It's an ongoing thing. And I'd like to acknowledge Norm Smallwood is your other partner, plus Alan Todd. Alan Todd.
Yep, I should have mentioned them. By the way, I hope all of you go online in your company and fill out the survey. We're giving it away. We're giving it away. Go RBL.ai, go fill out the survey, and you'll get a report that'll show what your company's doing. So Anyway, Abraham, that's I should have said that.
Thank you. And of course, thank you for acknowledging, thank you for acknowledging also our Associate Dean, Keith Roberts. I'd also like to mention, unfortunately, our Dean, Tom Horan, wasn't able to make it tonight. He would have loved to meet you as well. But we're so grateful that Keith made the time to be with us and to welcome you on behalf of the school. So I just wanted to mention that. Now, let's go and talk to our dear guest directly. Let me see has the first question. I'm going to call on two of you. We're going to be unbiased here. We're going to have two males and two females, and regardless, right? So let's go with Alex.
Oh, thank you, Professor. And Dr. Ulrich, thank you so much for your time tonight. In the beginning of your presentation, you mentioned the digital revolution as one of the big pieces of context that we're facing. Last week, Finland began the process of standardizing a 6-hour workday, with many labor advocates now challenging the traditional US 40-hour-a-week model. Given this exponential increase of productivity because of the digital revolution compared to, say, the industrial revolution, is it time that the US starts to rethink the 40-hour-a-week model? What would that do to output, and what does that mean about our current social norms around labor hours?
It's interesting to look at, you assume that productivity goes up that allows an economy to have a higher gross national product. I mean, those two things often co-vary. And in the machine age and in the industrial age, we saw incredible productivity increases as we went through these different stages of industrial revolution. In theory, technology allows incredible productivity increases, but it's not reducing the amount of hours people work. And in fact, when they try to control hours, and I'll be a little bit skeptical, not being an expert, I don't know Dr. Roberts' area of expertise, he may be an economist, but France tried the 30-hour work week 10 or 15 years ago, and it didn't work very well. Because one of the problems you face today, Alex, is you live in a global world. The competitors are not in Finland. In Finland, it's not just Nokia competing against somebody else. It's Nokia competing against Motorola if they're still in the phone business. It's a global competition, and you may be the best in your country, and we may be able to govern that, but you've got to live against global standards. And so, I think that competition. I don't think constraining hours is it sounds really good, but I think it ends up putting you at a competitive global disadvantage. The example I love of that is Eddie the Eagle. And nobody may remember Eddie the Eagle. It was a TV show, it was a movie. I think Keith remembers. But Eddie the Eagle wanted to go to the Olympics. He was British. And so he decided to go to the Winter Olympics as the best ski jumper in Britain. By the way, that's not a hard threshold. He's about the only ski jumper in Britain. So Eddie the Eagle jumped, and I'll make up numbers. And Keith, if you know the details, flesh this out. But I think he jumped something like 60 meters. So he went to the Olympics. Guess what? The winners were 90 meters. But he didn't care. He'd gone to the Olympics because he's now an Olympian. It's the Jamaican bobsled team, the same metaphor. I think Keith, you have something to add to that? You came off mute.
That's great. I do remember Eddie the Eagle. I think you're right on. So I really appreciate that example.
Oh, just that he, instead of being in last place, he preferred to call it 52nd place.
You know what that says is the 52nd student that graduates at Redlands with an MBA still graduated. It's okay to be the caboose. You're still with the train anyway. Keith Benson, thank you. And Keith Roberts, thank you. Now, by the way, why do I go through that, Alex? I think one of the dangers you get is when you define the boundaries of work within your geography. In today's global world, you're not there. I was doing work at Whirlpool a number of years ago. They're the appliance maker in the United States. And they said, we own 20% of the market. And they were all proud of that. That's a pretty dominant share of the white goods. And I said, you know, that's in the United States. When you go global, you have 5%. And your real competitor is Panasonic. Your real competitor is Haier out of China. Well, we don't pay attention to them. You know, guess what? You should. And so I think, Alex, some of those internal country things get difficult. I think for me, one of the real takeaways of the last 15 months, and people have said to me, what's the major takeaway in the last 15 months? My biggest takeaway is the term personalization. Let me say what I mean by personalization. I think we're finding people will respond to companies in a very personal way. For some, you're willing to work 70 hours a week. Others, because of kids, and well, we have 3 kids that are probably some of your ages. I had a daughter who quit her job to homeschool her 2 kids. That's what happened in the last year and a half. We have another daughter who she and her husband both cut back to where they're both working half time so they can raise their 3 kids. I have another son. He goes to work every day at 6:30 a.m. and comes home at 6:30 at night. They have a very different kind of relationship. And I'm not here to judge. It's very personal. And I think that personalization is going to become even more important in the next couple of years.
Thank you for such an insightful answer. And thank you for your engagement. I love the way you engage others and you bring the best of them. Thank you so much for that. Let's go. I was going to go to Idris, but I'd like to have a female's perspective on this, who's volunteering for the first question. Second question, should I call on you? Okay, Megan H.
So you mentioned that you're still in the researching phase. I'm in an incredibly small company. We have a total of 7 employees. We don't have a defined HR department. How do you foresee guidance working within such a small company?
You know, Megan, I think the smaller companies have more human capability requirements than the bigger ones. Why? If you're in a big company, let's just name a big company named, I'm going to call it Redlands. We'll do a hypothetical. So Redlands is a pretty big company. You can have an employee who may not be 100% effective and the company survives. You got 7 people. If you got one that's not working well, 1 out of 7, whatever that is, that's 15% failure. You got to manage that human capability. And every new person you bring on has to contribute and complement the other 7. And so you can do a survey if you want, or you can just look at it and say, how do I create the human capability of talent? Got to get the right people. Culture. What's our culture? What's it like to work here? Megan, have you worked in multiple companies?
I have. This is definitely the smallest that I've worked in.
Let me ask the question about culture. As you've moved from one company to another, if you were in a casino, it may have been a company like MGM or one of those where they have multiple casinos. How long before you can feel the culture of a company?
Pretty quickly, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, you can feel, how do people get along? What's the energy? What's the enthusiasm? If I'm in a company of 7, I got to get the right people. There's no question. I can't afford a bad hire. I've also got to create a great working environment, a great climate. By the way, the key to a good climate is you create a culture that makes your customers feel better about doing business with you. Culture is the identity of the firm in the mind of your best customer. Hospitality. Where's our hospitality?
Actually, Idris is going to be the one who's going to ask the third question.
Okay, so I'll skip Idris. But if
actually, it could be. He could answer. He could answer, and then he will continue from there.
What makes Disney so good? Disney creates a culture when you go to a theme park that makes you feel like magic. And those guys are crazy. A hotel that would cost you $100 a night because it's on Disney property and it has soap with Disney ears on it, it's going to cost you $200 a night because you had the privilege of being in a Disney hotel. That's hospitality. We found it in hotels, and I don't need to know, Idris, what chain, but a Holiday Inn changed to a higher end hotel. It changed to a Marriott or a Hyatt. Same room, same bed, some of the same people, but because they created a brand, they now got another 30 to 40% for the same hotel. I mean, that's what you want to create with your culture, is an image in the marketplace. And your job with 7 is to manage that human capability. I don't think you need to go through a big test to do that. I'll tell you a funny story. Steve Covey, we've all heard of Steve Covey. If you haven't, 7 Habits. I knew Steve. He was a mentor. His son lives right in our backyard, one of his sons. We're at his funeral, and his children were sharing stories about Steve. And his daughter went to her dad and said, "Dad, I'm really trying to follow your calendar, the Covey Franklin planner. I've got 3 kids at home. We're working. what do I do? And he looked down and he said, throw it away. Throw it away. Don't use any of that stupid stuff I gave you. That doesn't work for you. Just take care of yourself. Megan, you're a company of 7. Don't go create complications. Use
Fair
your
point.
judgment. Use your judgment. Don't complicate your life. Now, if somebody here is in a company with 2,000, you need to create systems. In a I called it, and none of you may remember, you're not old enough. If you went to a county fair, you had bumper cars where you'd get in a car and you'd bump into each other. You're a company of 7. You're a bumper car company. You bump into each other every day or every couple of days. If you're a company of 2,000, you can't do bumper cars. You've got to have systems that allow things to happen. My counsel with the company of 7 is just keep it really simple.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Idris. Let's go with you.
Hello, Dr. Ulrich. Thank you for your time. So my question centered around the future of HR. So do you see HR changing within the next 5 to 10 years in the virtual team approach? For example, over the last year or the last 15 months, COVID has really changed the way organizations have approached their HR practices. So do you see that continuing in the next 5 to 10 years?
I am going to demonstrate that I'm not gifted with language. So I'm going to give you an advance warning. If you have a sensitive ear for language, plug your ears. Plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose. Okay, let me say that again, and then I'll translate it because it's not easy to translate my bad language. Plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose. It's a French slang. The more things change, the more they're the same. Idris, I think that we're going to see principles that are the same. Guess what a principle is? People need to feel motivated. They need to build on what's important to them. They need to have personalized. And we're going to see practices that differ. So there's a great line by a great leader. We teach people correct principles. We let them govern themselves. HR is going to be some of the same. We're going to have to give employees motivation, engagement. We talk about 3 things that won't change: believe, become, and belong. Employees want to believe. They want to have a sense of meaning. They want to have a sense of purpose. They want to become better. They want to learn. They want to grow. They want a job where they can get better. Belong. They want to be part of a community. Those 3 principles, I think, will stay the same. We all want that. How you do that's going to vary. And that's the personalization that I alluded to. I think that's going to vary a lot by person, by setting. Will it be through technology? Will it be through face-to-face? Will it be what you call the Idris virtual teams? I think we'll see a lot of variation around the practice, but I don't think we'll see much variation around the principle.
Wonderful. Let's go with Megan M. We have 2 Megans in the class today, so let's go with Megan M.
Hi, so my question, I know that you said that this research is ongoing, encouraging us to have our own organization participate in that survey. What is your group, your team who's partaking in this? What's the ideal amount of companies you would like to survey for this research project? Do you have?
I don't have, and I'm laughing because, it's kind of, can you be too rich? And the answer is, I guess. Our job is not to get a big database. Let me be honest. Our job is to give individual companies insights that will help them be more successful. If our data set with 1,500 gives 1,500 companies insights, I'm thrilled. In the US right now, there's 7,000 publicly traded firms. I would love, and let me tell you where I hope this goes. In November of last year, 2020, the SEC in the United States required human capital as part of your 10K reporting. In the finance, you got to do all the SEC financial reports, the Form G, all the financial stuff. They now require human capital reporting so that investors have a lens into human capital as they make investment decisions. And that's what the SEC is about. I would hope the ideas that we're proposing structure that discussion. That when you do a human capital report to the SEC that investors look at, it includes information on talent, organization, leadership, and HR. For me, that would be so cool because now we're giving people a template. It's almost like, how do you do Alex is into finance. How do you do an income statement? How do you do a balance sheet? There are some rules that govern those decisions. I'd like us to create that same set of rules that companies can use. And then investors can look at 2 companies. Let me tell you what happens today. It's really cool. And I'll pick 2, Coke versus Pepsi. two companies in the same industry both earn 100. They both earn 100 in whatever metric, euros, yens, dollars, pounds. They don't have the same stock price. They both earned a 5 or 100. Let me make it 100. The stock price for two firms in the same industry with the same earnings often varies 20 to 30%. Why? It's because the investors have an intangible value of one of those firms. Coke over the last 10 years gets about a 10 to 15% increase for the same earnings as Pepsi. Nobody really knows how to track those intangibles. That's what human capability is about. What gives an investor confidence in their future success? And if we can codify that and find ways to track it, I just think that's really cool. I mean, that's a very technical term. It's really cool because I think it gives investors confidence. I think it gives employees confidence. And I think it creates a company that's more likely to succeed with customers. So that's the agenda we've got. I don't know what the sample will be.
Let me interject on this because you mentioned organization, you mentioned talent, you mentioned HR plus value. Now you're proposing in OGS, you're proposing the value this HR, which a talent can bring through the customer. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Abraham, you could do this as well as me. Right now in the HR field, there's a lot of buzz around employee experience. It comes from the idea of user experience and computers. It comes from an experience economy, the early work. I think employee experience that doesn't lead to customer experience is a false positive. The employee experience is highly correlated to customer experience. And we find that customer net promoter score is often correlated with employee net promoter score. So if I want to increase my customer experience, Disney, they want you to have a better experience at Disney. That's going to come to some extent because of the experience employees have working at Disney. I think creating that correlation in our heads is really helpful. And it's a virtuous cycle. The employee experience will lead to a better customer experience. The correlations are usually 0.6 to 0.8. And there's usually a lag and a lead that if you have an employee experience go up in 6 to 8 months, the customer experience will go up. We've been to Disney. The employees, and I would not be a good Disney employee. I have to be honest. Where it's 90 degrees and 90% humidity and little kids are pulling on your costume. Disney hires people who love that. And they go to our grandkids or your children and they give them this great experience of Frozen and Cinderella and Snow White. And they make it such a great experience. That's so cool. In Idris, I'll go back to you real quick. In hospitality, we have found that the attitude of the employees working at reception. So when I walk into a hotel, if you're in a hotel, or if I walk into a restaurant, if you're the man or woman at the counter in the restaurant, the attitude of that employee will have a high correlation with the guest attitude. And that's what we want to begin to create. Walmart did that when they started a long time ago. Walmart, when you went in, they had a greeter. And if you remember back, none of you may be old enough to remember, the image of the greeter at Walmart was your grandmother or grandfather. So they'd take older people, you'd walk in and an older person would say, "Oh, so nice to see you." And you'd feel like, "Oh, grandmother, such a nice thing. You have cookies today." Or "Grandpa, it's nice to see you. Carved me a little thing." They were intentional that those greeters at the Walmarts would help people have a better experience in the store. So that's, Abe, the correlation that people have studied for a long time. What would you add to that, Abe?
What you've said is very nicely put together. I wouldn't add anything at this time. But you know what I believe in? We have the customer, the organization, and employee. And I wanted that link so the employee feel valued when they are appreciated. So
one of the things that's so cool to do is to get customers. Let me give an example. I think I have it in the drawer. We've talked to companies doing this. For a number of years, I flew a lot. So I get, if any of you fly a lot, I get these things on Delta because I have 10 million miles on Delta. And if I don't know if any of you have gotten them because you fly a lot, but it's really cool. It's a coupon. And at the end of the year, I'd get 10 of these. Each of these coupons are worth $100. So Delta would give me, a customer who did one year I did 150 flights on Delta. So I was on a flight every other day on Delta. I now control $1,000 of their bonus pool. It's such a cool thing, because when an employee provides me good service, by the way, what I do is on a long flight, I would give an employee one of these and then they'd give me a whole lot of chocolate all the way on the flight to Europe. That's a joke. That's not the way to do it. But it was so cool that they're now getting me, the customer, connected to their HR practice. Stay with airlines. Southwest, by the way, these are so cool to give out.
How does that make you feel? How does that make you feel as a customer?
Oh, I love the chocolate. I love the, no, it makes me feel good because I'm able to give that employee $100. It's not mine. That makes me feel even better. American started it. This is the idea we've had. That's anyway. So I've got those kind of things that are there. Southwest, for when they were starting, you could not be a flight attendant. Have any of you flown Southwest? You have? What's the flight attendant like, Megan M? What's the flight attendant on Southwest like? What's your memory? We're stereotyping here, but.
I haven't flown for a little bit, but the last time I flew Southwest was to Houston, and I remember them being pretty engaging and like, you know, wanting to speak with us. And
they're funny. They tell stories. They climb in the overheads. Anyone else have a Southwest flight attendant who was kind of different than United? They're fun. How come? Southwest policy was you cannot be a flight attendant until you've been interviewed and approved by a panel of customers. So 1,000 people apply, they winnow it down to 100, and they're going to hire 50 or 60. The 100 come in and get interviewed by frequent flyers. And the frequent flyer says, I'd rather have a fun flight attendant than a boring one. I want to have a fun flight attendant. I think getting customer to training, the best companies in the world, when they do training programs for their employees, now invite in customers and suppliers. General Electric Crotonville is one of the training iconic centers in the United States. We got them to allocate 10 to 20% of every training slot in every course to a group of customers. That's cool. That's the kind of HR stuff that I think is connecting HR, Dr. Abe, from inside the company to outside.
Thank you so much. Let's go with Taylor.
Hello, Dr. Ulrich. Thank you again for being here. I work in law enforcement, so it's a little bit different, especially with everything going on in the world right now. What do you see specific to my career? Morale is something that can come and go very quickly. How do you see the best way to boost morale within an organization?
First of all, let me just say, whatever political spectrum you're on, I think we appreciate those who help in an appropriate way bring discipline to our society. There are countries where they don't have that appropriate law enforcement. Let me not talk bad. There are bad everything. You know, the company with the highest morale I've almost ever seen was the IRS. And I said, what's going on? By the way, it was horrible to be a consultant for the IRS because you'd get a letter and it would say from the IRS. And I think, oh my gosh, I'm going to be audited. And then it would be a letter or a check or something else. So it would be kind of weird. And here's the argument. I think sometimes it was us against the world. And I would hope, Taylor, that in law enforcement, that your greatest source of support are your peers. That we really, I talk about believe, become, and belong. We belong with each other. There is a sisterhood, a brotherhood, a fraternity, a sorority of law enforcement people who recognize that we're not loved by everybody. And we recognize that there are some who do a bad job. But net, we are committed to the service that we provide. And if you can do those three things, believe. Do we believe in our purpose? What are we trying to do? We're not trying to hurt people. By the way, if there's somebody in law enforcement who's trying to hurt people, get them out. Get them out. Become better. We're trying to learn how to build a better society and belong. Let's create a sorority, a fraternity, not only inside but outside. In any organization of change, it's 20-60-20. 20 love it, it's going to be great. 20% love anything law enforcement does. 20% will hate everything law enforcement does. Ignore both groups. Ignore both groups. It's fun to surround yourself with the good 20% and claim you're great. That's not helpful. Nor is it helpful to obsess about the 20% who will never appreciate you. Work on the 60%. How do we help them see that we're there to help them with their needs?
Beautifully said. As you've seen and noticed, Dr. Dave very much is passionate about social justice. And what he just shared with you is suspend your judgment and be for all, as we have always shared with you. I'm very mindful of the time. Scott, let's go with you. Tell us what you do and what's your question.
Hello, sir. My name is Scott Bowman, and I appreciate your time. Formerly, before I left the United States Marine Corps, and now I work for Fitness International, the biggest chain of fitness centers in the U.S., LA Fitness, where I'm an executive vice president over a number of clubs for sales and training. The question I have, which is for a company typically made up of younger individuals, social justice, actually politics used to be something within the workplace is just by norm you don't speak of. But due to the social justice issues that are going now, something that we're experiencing is at different locations, different individuals wearing, I guess you'd say, mementos, shirts, hats with various slogans, some of which I may or may not agree with, but tend to be offensive to some individuals at certain locations. And there is no clear-cut HR policy for managing those types of things. So what is a good suggestion for keeping in mind that social justice is important, and free speech is obviously in a right of each of us. But when I say social justice, there's some social justice slogans. There's also slogans on either side of the political agenda. And what would your suggestion be for potentially even a recommendation up the chain of command?
You know, that's a tough one. I remember working with IKEA in Europe, Scott, and they had the same issue around, for them, a lot of it was around religious rights and women wearing Muslim attire, men taking prayer breaks. I'm not sure there's a perfect answer for this. I'd love to hear how you think about it because you've lived with this problem. Well, let me ask you, what have you done and what's worked? And then I'll give you an observation or two. What have you done, Scott, and what's worked?
Scott, also tell us a little bit about before you joined LA Fitness.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. I was a United States Marine Corps. I left as a captain. Earlier today, we talked about organizational structure, and I spoke of the United States Marine Corps as a truly mechanistic chain of command, formal organization. However, this is a pretty difficult one for me because I have certain feelings on social justice that I would only tend to voice with. I don't think work is the right place to. I come from an organization of the Marine Corps where you hold your feelings in, and you don't speak of politics there because it's just not the right location. And I have taken that approach to professional business. However, again, I may be more, in a sense, old school than I'm not a social media guy, but I see that those that are younger than me have a different belief system where they view things, they feel with their entire selves, whether that be supporting a certain political party or a political type of group. However, both of those alienate certain individuals, which are, in this case, the customers. So I receive the complaints from the customers who, whether I have my beliefs or not, they are those that keep our business going forward.
It's funny. I wrote down two things, and you've hit some of both of them. The first one I wrote down is, what's the and this is hard because we believe in social justice. We believe in, most of us believe in free speech and in the ability to express opinions. When does that cross a line? And it's not a hard line, it's a fuzzy line. I think the answer is when it gets in the way of our success in the marketplace. Whichever side of the political spectrum that is, either the left or the right, when what we do at work gets in the way of our customers being willing to come to our places at LA Fitness and exercise, I think at that point you're saying, this isn't about your free speech. If we don't succeed in the marketplace with these customers, we're not going to have a workplace. We've got to succeed in that marketplace. And if your behaviors cross a line that keeps a group of customers out, I think that would be a criteria, not the only one, but a criteria. Second, and you alluded to that in your last comment, and I was really proud of you for making that I think the customer criteria becomes an issue. Three things. The second one is, it's called the New York Times test. What if, and it's the public media test, San Francisco Examiner, or wherever you live. What if the things we're doing in the company were public? What would that mean to our reputation in the marketplace? And I think that test is a very common kind of public test. The third one is a tricky one. I was on the board of directors at a company called Herman Miller. We make office furniture. We're founded with a group of religious people that are fairly conservative. And the rule was that I think at the time it was 5% of our annual profits would go to charity. Well, when I joined the board 20 years ago, we never told anybody. I mean, there's whatever scripture you follow, the Quran or the Bible, let not thy left hand know what the right hand doeth. Maintain your privacy. You know, in today's world, I don't think you brag about philanthropy, but I think you let people know. We are a company with a giving heart. I think the next generation, Scott, and it's always, there's different personalities, but I think many of the next generation do want to go to companies that give back, that have a social citizenship. And so I think it is appropriate to say, this is in LA Fitness, our commitment to social citizenship. Now, we are open to that as long as you live within those boundaries. So I've encouraged some business, don't brag, but we had one business leader in a company I was with. He had sold his company. His grandfather started it. His father had it. He had it. He was in his late 50s. He was going through life change, whatever that means for somebody in their 50s, happened to be male. Sold the company for $50 million, showed up this day the company was sold, basically sold the company out from his kids. He showed up with a brand new red Ferrari and parked it right in front of the company corporate office. And he said, what do you think? And I said, are you crazy? I mean, everybody knows you'd made $50 million and you sold your kids out. Don't buy a red Ferrari. You have enough money. Buy a red Ferrari and drive it on weekends, wherever you want to drive it. Go buy a Honda Civic and drive it to work. You got enough money. Because what you're doing is you're offending the philosophy and the ethos. By the way, he didn't agree. He said, I can do whatever I blank want. Absolutely. And you're going to lose good employees because they're going to go, that's not the kind of company I want to work for. So I think successful people are generous in their spirit and their heart. And I hope, Scott, you encourage that with those you work with. The other thing, Scott, I'm betting your company does philanthropy. The company does give back. Don't let that philanthropy be run by your executives. What we started doing at Herman Miller is we created a team of employees who self-nominated. And I think there were 6 or 8 of them, and they'd rotate. So it was a staggered committee every 3 years. They were in charge of that 5%. When I got on the board, the board gave it away, and we were so proud we're saving the world. And then we thought, that's really stupid. Let's let the employees form a team and they decide how to give the money away. And they started making videos and getting people involved so that they saw us as a company, as a sharing and giving company from the employee side, not just the executive side. That's another thing we just saw.
Thank you so much for such an insightful event. And I was going to ask you about Dr. Wendy. How is she doing and how is Michael?
Oh, thank you. I should go get my wife in the other room, but if I did that, she would not be happy with me because she's probably not in a place to show herself. So she's doing great. Thank you. Doctor, I've got to ask you, you've worked with the next generation. You've worked with them in Hollywood. You've worked with them in training and teaching. What excites you about the next generation? And don't name 2 or 3 people in the room. That would probably not be a good idea. But what excites you about the next generation in general? What gives you confidence?
You already sampled some of their talent. When we call them purposeful leaders, because it's a true thing, and we're trying, at least we're attempting here to do this. But let me give you a background story. In 2001, I was in their shoes. I was a student at the University of Redlands. I finished my bachelor here. I finished my master here, and our esteemed associate dean, Keith Roberts, actually was my mentor. So if you see my success, as I attribute it to him and to people in my life like him. So publicly, I'd like to acknowledge him. I'd like to thank him because he, after 23 or 24 years with the university, in July, he is going to be in a retirement doing something else. He's going to always serve others. To answer the question is to serve others. If you ask any one of our future purposeful leaders, what do you think about Dr. Abraham or Dr. Abraham, Professor Abraham? They will say he is helping us and serving us, because I told them, I am your servant from the beginning. I'm not your teacher, I'm your servant. So the same philosophy, hopefully the same ideas I'm giving them, they will eventually pay it forward to others. So they will say at one time, one of them is going to say, I was like you. They're a professor at the time, and they would say, I was like you. So basically just continue the being of service to others, because that is the best thing you can do. It's not how much money you have. It's not how much education you have. It's what you can do for others to improve them regardless of who they are.
I love it. So Bert, get ready, Bert, with the Golden Gate Bridge behind you. In 20 years, you will be a professor. And you will be doing, Robert is saying, no, I'm not going to be a professor in 20 years. So I hope you find the place. I love that answer. I had a chance at Michigan, the Ross Business School, to do a commencement address, which is really weird. They don't usually have faculty do that. And I and I didn't know what to talk. I don't have a rags to riches story like most addresses do. So I said, I coach people. And if I were coaching you, I'd ask you 3 questions. Question 1, what do you want? If you don't know what you want, somebody will define your wants for you. Are you clear? The woman I was coaching today, what do you want? What defines success? What are your passions, your strengths? Number 2, who do you serve? And Dr. Abe, that's, I think, a critical question. If all you do is care about your wants, you're a narcissistic leader and you're not going to go very far. Who do you serve? How do your skills help others get better? You don't build on your strengths, you build on your strengths to strengthen others. And number 3, how do I build? How do I build an institution that outlasts me? All of our research says that the team, Michael Jordan example with basketball, the team will outlive the individual. And if I can create an organization that outlives me, then I've created long-term success. So what do I want? Who do I serve? How do I build? Are 3 questions that I think are really critical for us as we think about our careers. Do you see the next generation having that? I like your word, purposeful leaders. Purposeful leaders. It's there's a lot of work on that. It's called conscious capitalism, center of ambition. I really like that, purposeful leaders. Do you see that in the next generation?
Absolutely. Now, our school, especially our dean, Dr. Tom Horan, we have the arc of leadership, the arc of purposeful leadership. So it's really in play. It's a concept in a philosophy in play. And that's what we attempt in these classes. And we're having talented people like you to come and share the knowledge and insights. That's really part of it too. This evening can go all the way until the morning, and I don't want it to do this because as you know, we have very talented individuals and eager to listen to you. I could have called on Keith, I could have called on Crystal, I could have called on Andrea, Joseph, Terrence. Each one of them has something to say, but we have a time limit, and I'm very respectful of your time. And I do thank you for coming to us and visiting us. You honored us by sharing this. I call it Marvel the first time, and I still call it Marvel the second time. This OGS, the organization guidance system, because it's going to be reinventing HR. But as you know, in every culture has norms and traditions. Every religion has a recitation or a prayer. And we at the University of Redlands, no difference. We have our own culture and we have our own chant to celebrate others. We celebrate you when we chant it. And I'm going to give the microphone to our Associate Dean, Keith, so this way he can lead us in chant. Yeah, Associate Dean Keith, it's yours.
Dr. Dave, thank you so much for being with us again tonight. I know the students have thanked you and Abraham has thanked you, but this is this has really been a terrific moment. A lot of insight, a lot of guidance, a lot of wisdom has come from you. And I know our students really, really appreciate it. I need to close it up here with what we call the Octomolly chant. This dates back to the early 1920s when a couple of students at the time at the University of Redlands came up with this chant. And it's used as a greeting. It can be used at sports games as a chant or whatever. The words are quite interesting. So, and I always do this at every graduation ceremony to end the graduation ceremony for the School of Business. So we're going to do the Octomolly on 3. But here we go. Octomolly, gazolly, gazumpty, up, the yada, yahoo. Hoo! Ink, the mink, the yada, gazink, the up, the ray, yahoo. Hoo! Wing, wang, tricky, tracky, poo, foo, joozy, woozy, skizzle, wazzle, wang, tang, orky, porky, dom, and orky, Redlands. Rah, rah, Redlands. Woo! Rah, Redlands.
This is beautiful. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for sharing what you have. Dr. Dave Ulrich, you are always honoring us. Thank you. Welcome to the University of Redlands. We call ourselves bulldogs, and you are a bulldog in your own life. I mean, you have that in you. Thank you.
Thank you. What a privilege. You know, at Michigan, we're not that smart. Ours is really short. Go blue. That's it. We're not as smart as you are. We can't remember all those words. Go blue. And then we sing Hail to the Victors. The original song at Michigan, the fight song, was It's Going to Be a Hot Time in the Old Town Tonight. And they did away with that because that wasn't really an appropriate song. So they came up with Hail to the Victors, which is somewhat like your Octomolly. That was sweet. Thank you so much. Thanks, Keith. If you have another comment, I'll leave it back to you and Dr. Abraham to end. Thank you to all. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much. Good night. Regards to the family. Appreciate you.